The people who look rich are often the ones closest to broke. And the people who look like they're barely getting by, they're quietly building something most people will never see coming. I used to think wealth was visible. I thought you could spot it. The car, the watch, the apartment, in the right neighborhood. Turns out, I had it completely backwards. Today I'm going to show you the exact strategy that genuinely wealthy people use to stay wealthy and why. From the outside, it looks almost indistinguishable from being broke. Hit subscribe if you want to keep running the real math on how money actually works. Here's what nobody tells you about the way most people relate to money. Society doesn't reward being rich. It rewards looking rich. And those are two completely different games with two completely different outcomes. Think about every signal you've been trained to read as success. The new car, the designer sneakers, the constant restaurant posts, the upgraded apartment every 2 years. We were handed a script, and most of us just started reading it. The technical term for what's happening here is status spending, and behavioral economists have studied this pattern extensively. It's the tendency to allocate money not toward things that build long-term security, but toward things that broadcast a particular image to the people around you. And here's the brutal part. The image rarely matches the balance sheet. You could be earning $80,000 a year and have almost nothing to show for it in actual net worth. Because every raise, every bonus, every moment of financial breathing room got converted immediately into a visible lifestyle upgrade instead of an invisible wealth-building movie. That's the trap. And it's not a trap for dumb people. It's a trap specifically designed to catch people who are smart enough to earn decent money, but haven't yet made the psychological shift that changes what they do with it. If you're trying to look rich before you are rich, you are funding your own cage. You're locking yourself into a lifestyle that requires every dollar you make just to maintain, which means you never actually get ahead, no matter how much your income grows. So let me be completely clear about what acting broke actually means. Because I'm not talking about eating rice and beans every night or canceling every small pleasure in your life. That's not the strategy. That's just misery with a budget. Acting broke is not about deprivation. It's about intentional spending discipline despite having money. It's a conscious choice to spend below what you could spend because you understand that the gap between what you earn and what you spend is the only raw material wealth is ever built from. This isn't about what you can afford. Afford is almost an irrelevant word once you start thinking this way. The question that actually matters is, what do you choose to afford and why are you choosing it? Are you choosing it because it genuinely adds value to your life? Or are you choosing it because someone might notice, because it signals something, because it makes you feel like the version of yourself you're trying to perform for an audience that honestly doesn't care as much as you think? That distinction between spending that serves your life and spending that serves your image is the entire psychological foundation of what we're talking about today. And once you start seeing it, you cannot unsee it. Now, let's talk about what this actually looks like in real behavior. Because the wealthy people who practice this aren't sitting around feeling deprived. They don't avoid spending because they're struggling. They avoid certain spending because they understand something called opportunity cost at a genuinely visceral level. Opportunity cost isn't just an economics term. It's the quiet awareness that every dollar has a next best use. And if you spend it on one thing, you've permanently closed the door on what else that dollar could have become. A dollar spent on a depreciating status symbol isn't just gone. It's everything that dollar could have compounded into gone with it. This is why you'll find genuinely wealthy people driving older cars. Not because they can't afford new ones, because they've done the math on what that monthly payment would look like invested over the next decade. And the new car lost the comparison so badly it almost seems funny. This is why some of the highest net worth individuals you'll ever encounter are wearing unremarkable clothes, living in modest homes, and ordering the same lunch they ordered last Tuesday. It's not that they don't have taste. It's that they've transferred their ego investment from appearances to outcomes. Middle-class money behavior tends to follow one sequence: spend first, then save whatever's left. Which, let's be honest, is usually nothing. Wealthy money behavior runs the sequence in reverse: invest first, then spend what remains. Now, one reversal, compounded across years, creates an entirely different financial life from the same starting income. Now, here's where this gets uncomfortable, because acting broke isn't just a spending strategy. It's a response to three very specific psychological traps that most people fall into without ever naming them. And you need to name them to escape them. The first trap is social pressure spending. This is money that leaves your account, not because you wanted something, but because of what other people might think if you didn't have it. The birthday dinner at the expensive restaurant you can't really afford. The vacation you booked because everyone else was going. The thing you upgraded because your friend got the newer version and you felt the gap. Here is the uncomfortable truth about social pressure spending. If your financial decisions are being made by other people's opinions, you are not actually in control of your money. Other people are. People who do not pay your bills, do not share your financial goals, and will not be there when you're trying to figure out why you have nothing saved at 53. That's not a small thing. Your entire financial trajectory quietly being steered by the imagined judgment of people who are probably too busy managing their own image to even notice yours. The second trap is lifestyle inflation. And this one is sneaky because it feels like reward. You get a raise. Things loosen up. You upgrade the apartment, the car, the subscriptions, the wardrobe because you earned it, right? You deserve it. But here's what actually happened. You got a raise, and your net worth didn't move. Because every additional dollar you earned found a new monthly obligation waiting to absorb it. The income grew, the expenses grew to match. The gap between them, the only place wealth can live, stayed exactly the same. Lifestyle inflation is one of the most well-documented patterns in personal finance research. It's sometimes called the hedonic treadmill, the human tendency to adapt rapidly to improved circumstances and immediately want the next level. The raise stops feeling like a raise within about 3 months, and now you need another one just to feel okay again. The third trap is debt-fueled status. This is the one that genuinely keeps me up at night when I think about how normalized it has become. Cars financed for 7 years, phones on payment plans, designer items on credit cards carrying 22% interest. Debt is how people simulate wealth they haven't built yet, and the simulation is convincing enough that it fools even the person doing it. You feel richer? The car is nice. The phone is impressive, but underneath the image, the math is running in the wrong direction every single month. Here's the part nobody frames this way. Debt-fueled status spending isn't just expensive, it's renting an identity. You're paying monthly for the experience of feeling like a version of yourself you haven't actually become yet. And the rent never builds equity. So what does the alternative actually look like as a strategy? This is what I call stealth wealth. And it's not complicated, but it requires a kind of psychological discipline that most people underestimate. The first pillar, spend like you're one level below your actual income. If you earn at an upper middle class level, structure your lifestyle like someone solidly middle. Not as punishment, as strategy. The gap between those two income levels, redirected consistently into investments, is the mechanism that actually builds wealth. Everything else is just decoration. The second pillar, hide your financial progress, at least from most people. When your income goes up, don't announce it with visible upgrades. Silence is genuinely part of the strategy here. The less people know about your financial trajectory, the less social pressure exists to spend in ways that match an image rather than a plan. This sounds almost paranoid until you sit with it. Think about how many spending decisions in your own life happen because someone saw something and then you felt the pressure of that visibility. The goal isn't secrecy for its own sake. It's removing the social feedback loop that keeps lifestyle inflation running on autopilot. The third pillar. Prioritize assets over appearances. An asset is something that holds or grows value investments, skills, a business, real estate with positive cash flow. An appearance is something that looks like wealth but drains money continuously and leaves you with nothing on the other side. The practical question you can ask before any significant purchase: is this an asset or an appearance? Is this building something? Or is this signaling something? You're allowed to buy appearances occasionally. Just do it consciously, knowing exactly what game you're playing. The fourth pillar is perhaps the most psychologically demanding. Delay visible rewards. You can look rich now, or you can be rich later. The research on this is consistent. People who delay gratification in favor of long-term financial outcomes build substantially more wealth over time than people of equivalent income who don't. But this isn't just self-control theory. It's understanding a trade-off clearly enough that the delayed choice becomes the more attractive one. The new car isn't tempting once you've genuinely calculated what that money becomes in 15 years. The expensive apartment upgrade loses its appeal when you're watching your investment account compound into something real. Now, let me tell you WHY. This strategy actually works mechanically because the psychology only holds if the math underneath it is real. And the math is stunningly, almost disturbingly real. Compounding is the mechanism. And the thing about compounding that most people understand intellectually but haven't truly internalized emotionally is that the growth isn't linear. It's exponential, meaning the returns themselves generate returns. The longer the money stays in, the faster the whole thing moves. But it needs time. Specifically, it needs the time you give it by not spending the principal on things that disappear. The wealth gap between people of similar incomes is almost never explained by income differences. It's almost always explained by what percentage of that income was consistently invested over a long enough period for compounding to do its work. $10,000 invested consistently over 20 years doesn't grow to $20,000. At historical average market returns, it grows into something that genuinely shocks people when they see the number. Because the human brain is not naturally equipped to feel exponential growth, only to calculate it. But there's something beyond the math. Something that compounding wealth buys that no status purchase ever could. And that's options. Genuine, unscripted options. The option to leave a job that's making you miserable. The option to take a year and figure something out. The option to not panic when something breaks, when something ends, when something unexpected arrives. That's what wealthy people mean when they talk about freedom. Not private jets and expensive vacations necessarily, but the freedom to make decisions from a position of security instead of desperation. That particular kind of freedom is invisible. You can't photograph it. Nobody at the dinner party will notice it, but it changes the texture of your entire life in a way that a new car simply cannot. There's also a psychological advantage to stealth wealth that doesn't get talked about enough. When you're not performing financial success for an audience, the pressure drops significantly. You stop needing the next visible upgrade to feel okay about where you are. You stop comparing your balance sheet to someone else's wardrobe. You're playing a private game with clear rules and real stakes, and that clarity is genuinely calming in a way that the status-chasing alternative never is. So let's make this immediately practical, because insight without behavior change is just entertainment. Before any non-essential purchase, pause. Not to perform frugality. Just to ask one honest question. Do I want this thing? Or do I want to look like someone who has this thing? The answer will surprise you more often than you expect. And once you start hearing your own honest answer, the impulse loses a lot of its power. Try the 24-hour rule on anything that isn't a necessity. Not because you can't afford it, but because desire that survives 24 hours of waiting is usually genuine desire. While desire that disappears overnight was almost always manufactured by context, by marketing, by the social moment you were in. Stop upgrading things simply because you can. The fact that you could afford the better version is not sufficient justification. The question is whether the better version adds enough real value to your actual daily life to justify what it costs in opportunity, not just in dollars, but in compounding time, and start tracking what I'd call invisible wins. Your savings rate climbing. Your investment account crossing a new threshold. The month you actually hit your contribution target. These are the wins that don't photograph well, but are building something real. And paying attention to them retrains your brain to derive satisfaction from financial progress instead of financial performance. Here's the identity shift that underlies all of this. And it's the part that has to happen for the practical changes to stick. The goal isn't to stop wanting a good life. The goal is to stop confusing looking successful with actually being financially free. Those are not the same destination. One is a performance that requires a continuous, expensive audience. The other is a private condition that gives you the power to make your own choices without asking money's permission first. Wealth is built in private before it is ever visible in public. The years of quiet discipline, of consistent investing, of resisting the lifestyle upgrade, those years don't look impressive from the outside. They look like nothing is happening, but something is happening. Underneath the surface, compounding is running. The gap between income and expenses is widening. The options are multiplying. The reason genuinely wealthy people sometimes look like they're barely spending anything is because they understand something that most people figure out too late. They're not playing the game everyone can see. They're playing a longer, quieter, far more interesting game, one where the score isn't visible until the very end, and by then, the distance between them and everyone else is impossible to close quickly. Stop trying to impress people who don't pay your bills. Stop spending money you earned to maintain an image in the minds of people who are too busy managing their own image to notice yours in the first place. Start building something they won't understand until it's already built. Drop a like if this landed. It genuinely helps more people find this kind of content. And if you want to keep going deeper on how money actually behaves when you stop performing with it and start building with it, subscribe. Because most people will go their whole lives never hearing this framed this way. You just did.